I give every single student the choice, or actually I should say, I give every single student the opportunity to use their notes during the test, okay? Every single student can use their notes on the test, and we all do our notes together. I make sure that they highlight, and if they don't highlight, that's on them. I've tried my best. I even supply my own highlighters. Everything's up to them. Now, this was the test that they were given on the left. I'm going to work through every single problem on this test, and I'm going to compare to the notes that they had during the test. And I'm going to go back and forth between the notes and pair it with the question. For example, this very first question, we have a shape, and this, they've been told this is a composite figure. It's two shapes that are one. The very first step in our notes, if we were to go to our notes, very first step, separate the shapes, okay? And the second line is highlighted. This is an older copy. The second is combine lines if necessary. Now, not for the first question, that's not the problem. For the first question, it is actually up here. They give us the shape, and they give us the length at the top or bottom of what the square is inside the shape. That then leaves us with two triangles on both sides. Now they can be flipped, they can be, one is up and one is down, doesn't matter. But using our knowledge of splitting the shape and then subtracting it from what we have, so if we subtract the square and take it out, 9 minus 4 would equal 5. So for the test, that means I'm going to draw a line right here, just like in my notes. I have 7, so I'm going to draw, I even tell them, draw the shapes. Draw the shapes, it's best to visualize it. My base of my shape is 7. My height is 13. Now that makes it so this area is taken out. I find these two areas. Well, they give us one side of the triangle, which is 4, but then they have to remember that this other side is also a triangle, so you actually will combine your triangles.
Good afternoon, PTA. We're coming and getting our bus riders. Have a great day, and we'll see you for a fantastic Friday.
So, 4 and 4, and you'll combine it into 8 for our base.
Attention Building 2, any students that need to go to Building 1 for any reason, please report to the front office at this time. Building 2, any students that need to go to Building 1 for any reason, please report to the front office at this time.
Now, of course, the height stays the same, right? So that means that our triangle, and to make sure we're not confused, we're going to erase everything and put the correct measurements down. We now have our two shapes, and we are trying to find the area. Every single time I tell them, write the formula of the shape. And our notes, I specifically have. Now, of course, it's length times width, but I just say base times height for the students so they can understand it. So, for the students, they see that 1 over 2, base times height, is the area for our triangle. Well, how do they know it's for the triangle? If you go to our 9.1 notes, and this is highlighted on their paper, A equals 1/2 times base times height. So, knowing that, we're going to then write the formula. 1/2 base times height, and I always tell them to write the formula first, don't even plug it in, plus base times height for our rectangle. Now we plug in what we know. Well, 1/2 times base, our base of our triangle is 8. Our height of our triangle is 13. Plus the base of our rectangle is 7. The height is 13. And I always tell the students, always cut the number that's easier to cut in half. Is it easier to multiply our base and height and then cut it in half? Or is it easier just to cut one of the digits instead? Well, half of 8 is 4. So it's 4 times 13 plus 7 times 13. 4 times 13 should be, let's see, what, 52? And I tell them, if you don't know right off the top of your head, put off to the side. 12, 1, 4, 5. So 52. But then we have to do the other shape. 13 times 7. 21, 7, 9, 91. So it's plus 91. That should equal 143. And I always tell them, what is the unit? What's the label? Well, our label is in inches. So inches, and it's for the area, it has to be squared. So this would be our answer for number 1. And again, there's a whole lot of work. And I've offered paper, I've offered the back of the tests, anything. Okay? I tell them to show all their work. Number 2 is just the area of a triangle. Again, it's just 1/2. A equals 1/2 times base times height. 1/2 times my base is 8 times my height, which is also 8. Easier to cut 8 in half than it is to try and cut 64 in half. So 1/2 of 8 is 4. 4 times 8 is 32. Again, what is our label? We see it's centimeters squared. Now, if the students put cubed, it's wrong. If they don't put the squared, it's wrong, because there are different scenarios where you use those in. Cubed being volume and the regular being a missing dimension. Okay? Now we see that shape that we saw earlier in our notes. Again, let's go to our notes. If you see, I separated them in half. Now they could have separated it long ways. You still will get the same answer. Okay? But I say, separate the shapes, combine the lines, because when you cut it in half, we have a 4 and a 4. So you see that we would have to combine 4 plus 4. And I've told them, especially when we did the review as well the day before. So we would have to do formulas. And since it's 2 triangles, it's 2 triangle formulas. So I'm going to cut it in half just to make it easy for myself. And I say, draw your shapes again. So we drew our shapes again. Our height of one triangle is 7. The height of the other triangle is 12. Now we see we have an 8 yard plus 8 yards. We're going to combine those two, because again, we're combining those lines to make one solid line. We're trying to make the base. 8 plus 8 is 16. I say write the 16. If they can do an arrow on both sides, that's perfectly fine. Now we have to write the formula. Well, A equals 1/2 times base times height plus 1/2 times base times height. Notice again, I'm writing the formula every single time. It helps. It makes sure you don't forget the half, which I saw multiple times. And again, it's in our notes. So 1/2 times our base, we're going to choose the left side, is 16. Times 7 plus 1/2 times base is 16 as well, times 12. Again, what's easier to cut in half, 16 or the end result? I rather cut 16 in half. Or divide by 2, as I say to the students. 16 divided by 2 is 8 times 7 plus, again, half of 16 is 8 times 12. 8 times 7 is 56 plus 8 times 12. 96. So we have 56 plus 96. Again, if they don't know how to do it off the top of their head, I tell them to stack them. There's no point in trying to do it in your head and getting it wrong after you've done all of this work. So what? 152. What's the unit? Well, our unit for this question is yards, and what are we trying to find, which is area, so that's squared. This would be our answer. Now this one was challenging if you weren't paying attention, because it looks like a square, but if you look closely, there's a number on the bottom and a number on top. That tells me that is a compound shape. And again, if we look at our compound shape in our notes, It's the exact same thing, it's just shorter and also not upside down. Okay? So I noticed that I have to make them into two shapes. Nope, not what I wanted to do. So, we have 12 on top. So I'm going to make my square because we see that it's 12 and 12. 12 for our base, 12 for our height. Then we're going to make our triangle. Well, guess what? We're going to minus 12 from 13, and I'm left with 1. So my base for my triangle will be 1, because notice how they're both on same sides. My height will stay the same, which is 12. Now again, I say write the formula. A equals 1/2 times base times height for my triangle, plus base times height for my square. Well, we fill it in. 1/2 times base, which is 12, which is 1, times 12, plus 12 times 12. Well, it's easier to do half of 12 than it is to try and have them trying to think in decimals. So I say, what's half of 12, which is 6. 6 times 1 is 6. 12 times 12 is 144. 144 plus 6 is 150 inches, which is our unit, squared, because again, we're trying to find the area. Yeah. I'll leave that up there because I'm going to have the students, if they want to do test corrections, they have to do exactly what I'm doing, because the only way they can get better is by working on it, by writing everything, by writing every step. Number 5, find the height of the triangle. So they give us the area. This is in 9.1 notes on the second page. Area of a triangle, 9.1, all the way down. Finding a missing dimension. Our very first step is to write the formula. Substitute, simplify, and then do the opposite property, which is division. And then that will help us get our answer. Right? So, we, again, write our formula first. First thing we do. How are we going to figure out if we don't write our formula? Now we're going to plug in what we know. Well, guess what? 42 is my area, so I'm going to plug that in. Times 1/2 times, when my base is 14. Do I know what my height is? Well, it's h. Now I try and simplify. Half of 14 is 7. 7 times h is going to be 7h equals 42. Well, we have to get h by itself. So we're going to have to divide by 7. And 42 divided by 7 is 6 equals h. Now again, I tell them, what is the label? It should be centimeters. If they decide to put centimeters squared, cubed, it's wrong. It's not the right answer I'm looking for. Okay? For this very next question, it says to find the number of faces, edges, and vertices of a triangular prism. Now note, I did have to go back and tell them, or draw it for them, of what a triangular prism looks like. We've done a triangle pyramid, but not a prism. So I drew on the board for them. Now if we go, now I did tell them, just 2 triangles, different heights, and then just bring the lines to each of their respective areas. What are faces, edges, and vertices, you might ask? Well, don't worry, 9.3 is going to help us. Of 3-dimensional figures, what are faces, edges, and vertices, or vertex? A face is a flat or curved surface of a solid. So notice I even color coordinated them, right? And even down here, I put faces. Edge, well, what is an edge? It's a line segment or a curve. Well, what does that mean? It just means that it's just the line. Vertex is a point where 3 or more edges intersect. They can also just think about it as corners. Okay? So, now that we know what they are, we go back. We will draw the shape. Again, I'm just going to draw the shape. One higher than the other. Bring the lines together. You have a triangular prism. Now I then have to count. How many faces do I have? I'm going to put F for faces. Well, I have 1, 2, front and back. Then I have 1, 2, 3. So 3 plus 2 is 5. So we have 5 faces. Edges. We have to look how many edges there are. Well, 3 makes up a triangle. And we have 2 triangles, so that's 6. And then we have to have them connecting, so that's another 3. So 6 plus 3 is 9. How many vertices? Well, we just have to circle all the corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So our vertices, or vertex, we have 6 of them. Now, surface area was a very challenging chapter, and I can understand why. It's a lot of numbers. In our notes, I tried helping them. Let's see. Oh, that's volume. Oh, I forgot that I have to bring up the pictures. So surface area, I tell them they have to flatten the shape so they can try and figure it out. Now I did come up with a better method, and I call it the triangle method. They have 3 numbers that they are given, typically when we're talking about surface area, when we're talking about rectangles and squares and everything. So I have 3 numbers. I have 4, 7, and 3 on my example. All I would do is multiply each one by each other. So 7 times 3, 7 times 4, then 4 times 7. 4 times 3. Now, I tell them to do this. We're not done. And then we can figure it out. So we have 21, we have 28. I'm going to do a darker color. Now that I'm on the side. 21, 28, and then we have 12. Now, as you can see, I have the numbers off here. And then I tell them, add them all up. 21 plus 28 is 49, plus 12, 61. Then I tell them to multiply it by 2. Why do we multiply by 2? Because each one of these have a pair. Top and bottom, side to side, and front and back. Okay? Each one has a pair, so we multiply by 2. We get 2, we get 12, 122. Did we get the exact same answer on my notes? Yes, we did. So I was showing them this method after, in case it was easier for them. Because I know that trying to sort out which one's which can be very, very challenging. Even I was having trouble keeping track if I wasn't fully focused. So let's go back to my example. On the test, I have 3 digits. 1, 2, 3. I have 3, 4, and 5. So I have 5 times 3, 5 times 4, and then 4 times 3. We have 15, we have 20, we have 12. Add them all up, 7, 4, we have 47. And again, the very next step I tell them, multiply by 2. Whoops. 8, 9. So I have 94. Again, what are we trying to find? Surface area. Or are we trying to find volume? Well, we're trying to find the surface area. So it's going to be meters squared. And that's going to be my answer for that question. Okay. That may or may not work for this. I haven't tried it personally, and my students have said that has worked, but I'm going to show you what my notes say. And again, it's always back to the notes. And it just so happened that I'm landing on the page. If you see this, it says, find the surface area of a square pyramid, specifically squared. I also have rectangular pyramid down there, if we were to encounter that. This says, I have to multiply my bottom, and then I have to multiply to find my triangle. But guess what? With a square pyramid, all four sides are identical. If you look up here, all four lateral faces are identical. So they know this. It's in their notes. So after you find your answer, you then multiply it by 4. Then you add up the bottom and all your sides. So let's go back to our test. And I tell them, draw the shape out, flatten it, anything to show for those visual learners. So I have 4 times 4 on my bottom. And then I have height of 5, so that's going to be what my triangle is. So I'm actually going to take that out. My square is 4 times 4, which is 16. Then I have my triangle, and I tell them, write the triangle formula. 1/2 times base times height. Well, 1/2 of 4 is 2, times your height is 5, and that's 10. But how many sides do we have in our square pyramid? We have 4, so we have to multiply that by 4. Now we have 40 plus 16, which is 56. 56 what, you might ask? Oh, 56 millimeters squared. Again, it's in their notes. They are able to use their notes during the test. They are able to highlight it. They're even able to add their own notes to their notes if they want to. If what I'm saying does not work with what they have in their head. And that's perfectly fine. I say use whatever method is possible, okay? So let's go to the next question. Finding the volume of the rectangular prism. Volume is in our 9.6. Oh, I lost it. Well, what's the volume formula? Well, it's right here. Length times width times height. I even have volume of rectangular prism up there. And I mean, the cube is the same thing as the other one, which is volume equals s to the power of 3. It's the exact same thing as length times width times height. It just looks fancy. And I tell them that. It looks fancy, but don't worry too much about it. So we look at it. 1/8 times, let me go back and write my formula. V equals length times width times height. Do I have to actually know which one's which? Not really. Multiplication stays the same no matter which order you do it in. So 7/8 times 2/3 times 1/8. We then try and work it out. 7 times 2 is 14. 8 times 3 is 24. And then again, I tell them to write down the next step. Don't just try and do it in your head. You're going to forget a step. 14 over 24. And we're going to do 24 times 8 because I can't do that in my head. At least not quickly and without a possibility of error. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 is 19. So I have 119 now. And then 14 times 1 is 14. Then I tell them, can we simplify? What does that mean? Can we make the number smaller by dividing the top and bottom by the same number? Well, I go, are they both even numbers? Because I say, try 2, 3, 5, and 7. Those are typically the ones that if you have no idea what to do, you can just divide them. And then I know what half of 14 is, it's 7, but do I know what the half of 192 is off the top of my head? No. And I tell them, that's perfectly fine, just put down a division. How many times does 2 fit into 1? Nothing. 2 fit into 19. It fits into it 9 times. How many times does 2 fit into 12? It fits into it 6 times. So in the end, I have 796. Again, it is volume. That means in our notes, if we were watching, it's going to be our unit cubed. Because we can't do 2, we can't do 3, we can't do 5, we can't do 7. So there's nothing that fits in there. Okay? If they didn't simplify, it's wrong. Because again, I've said this over and over and over and over and over. You need to simplify it unless they specifically say in the question to not simplify it. Again, the other one's just the exact same thing. It's a square. 4 times 4 over 5 times 4 over 5 times 4 over 5. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5 is 25. Then I do the same thing. 16 times 4 is 64. 25 times 5 is 125. And I do time myself. And I try to show as much work as possible. And then I multiply whatever I get in the end by 10. So I took about 8 minutes for this test, and I had done one of the questions, and I got it wrong because of a simple mistake, but I took it out. Because if I got it wrong, they could probably get it wrong too. So I have 64 over 125. Can 2 fit? No, they're not both even. Can 3 fit? No, 3 does not fit into 64. Nothing else fits. So it's going to be 64 over 125 yards cubed. Again with the cubes. Okay? Number 11. This is 9.1 and 9.2 combined. It's find the missing dimension, and it's also the composite figure that you have to separate. So, I'm going to separate my shapes. I'm going to write my shapes. I know my base for my rectangle is 7. But do I know my height? No, I don't actually. Do I know my height for my triangle? Nope. But guess what? What's 10 minus 7? It's going to be 3, so my triangle has 3. Now we're going to write our formulas again with the formulas. So area equals, I'm going to do my triangle first. 1/2 times base times height plus base times height. Now I'm going to fill it in. 1/2 times my base is 3, so I'm going to times it by 3 times h plus 7 times h. Well, what's half of 3? Unfortunately, this is where they have to start realizing that sometimes they're going to have decimals. So half of 3 is going to be 1.5. How do I figure that out? I could also just divide it by 2. 2 fits into 3 ones, and then I put a 0 at a decimal, and then 2 fits into 10 5 times. So 1.5 times a variable, they attach. I tell them they attach. Whenever you get a variable multiplying a number, they will attach to each other. Plus 7 times h is 7h. If you add those up together, it'll be 8.5h. Again, we know our area. So I'm actually going to input that. I didn't put it up there. I'm going to input it down here though. So I have 51 divided by 8.5. And I tell them, can we divide with a decimal in the divisor? We cannot. So we're going to have to move to the outside. And guess what? Wherever you do the outside, you do the inside. Now, how many times does 85 fit into 510? Well, I'm going to take a shot in the dark. I know that I have to have an even number to have a 0, so I'm going to say, let's try 6. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 8 is 48. 48 plus 3 is 51. Oh, that fits into it perfectly. It fits into it 6 times. And then guess what? Do we have any remainder? No, we do not. So our height equals 6 meters. And if you said squared, that's wrong. Because again, we're finding the dimension, the missing dimension, not the area. 12 was very, very difficult. It's one of the questions where I thought that I need them to start getting used to about 3-step problems, 2 or 3-step problems. And I did go over this the day before. We had a review and everything. It's just using what we know and using our critical thinking skills. So we have a triangle, has a base of 12 feet and a height of 8 feet. So immediately what I tell them to do, make a triangle and label it. By how much does the height need to increase for the area to increase by 4.5 square feet? So that means I have to increase the area for my shape. So guess what? Formula, 1/2 times base times height. My area, I don't know it yet. 1/2 times my base is 12 times 8. Half of 12 is 6. 6 times 8 is 48. Now I have my area. But I'm not done yet. It says I still need to find the height of my second shape. And I need to increase my area by 4.5. So I'm going to add 4.5. Because it says increase. I tell them, look for the keywords. It's even in their notes. I'll probably put it in the comments. So I am left with 52.5. Again with decimal. So 52.5. I'm going to write another one. So 52.5 is my area of my new shape. My 1/2 times base stays the same. So it's 12. Times, we don't know what my new height is. We need to try and find the height. 1/2 of 12 is 6 times h is 6h equals 52.5. Again, do I know how to divide that off the top of my head? No. If I don't know it, they probably don't know it too. But if they do, congratulations. That's amazing. But guess what? I'm going to show my work. How many times does 6 fit into 52? Well, it fits into it 8 times. Oops. Okay, a little bit worked up. And I tell them, move the decimal up. How many times does 6 fit into 45? It fits into it 7 times. And I have 3, and I tell them, if you sell remainder, you gotta put another 0. How many times does 6 fit into 30? It fits into it 5 times. Now, we found out what our height is, 8.75. But what is the question asking for? How much does the height need to increase for the area to increase? So we actually need to see the difference. Difference means subtraction. And I told them that too. And they know it. 8.5 minus 8. We are left with 0.75 increase. If they did this, I'll accept it. I didn't really care about the units. If they did 0.75 feet increase, that's fine too. Or if they did 0.75 feet, that's fine too. Now I told them we're going to skip 13. And 14, because 14 was the one that I got wrong. And I decided that if I got it wrong, and I couldn't figure out how I got it wrong, I'm going to cross it out. Number 15, their very last question. Again, volume, 9.6. They know it. It's just we're having to apply those skills now. The company sells 2 different safes. The safes have different dimensions, but the same volume. What's the height of safe B? Well, it looks like we need to solve what our volume is first to find out. So in safe A, we have all 3 of our needed length times width times height. So volume equals length times width times height. And we fill it in, 18 times 15 times 24. Do I know these off the top of my head? No, I do not. And that's perfectly fine. We have 40. We have 9, 0, 8, 1, 0, 7, 2. 270 times 24, and I tell them again, show your work. 270 times 24. I feel like if I get this wrong, it's going to be pretty sad. 8, 10, 0, 0, 14, 4, 5. We have 0, 8, 4, 6. That's actually, I remember that being right. Now, so this is our volume now. But we're asking, what's the height of safe B, not just the volume? So guess what? 6480 goes into my formula. Which, if we remember, length times width times height. But we can actually replace V with 6,480. Now our length is going to be 20. Our width is going to be 18. Our height is going to be H. 20 times 18, I tell them, what is 18 times 2? If you don't know, perfectly fine. 16, 2, 3, and then add your 0 back in. We have 360. 360 times H is 360H. Then we divide it. To get rid of it, we need H by itself. So we divide 360. Then 360. So right now, off the top of my head, how many times 360 goes into it? Nope. Can I figure it out though? Yup. 6,480 divided by 360. Does 360 fit into 6? No. 360 fit into 64? No. Does 360 fit into 648? Yes, it does. Well, how many times? Well, I'm going to just check once. 8, carry the 1, we bring it down, we have 8. No, we don't. Yes, we do. And then I have 2. And then I'm going to bring my 0 down. Well, how many times does 360 fit into 2,880? Well, I'm going to do some math. It looks like it's going to be closer to 10, so I'm going to throw out a random number. Let's try 8. Because I tell them, sometimes if you're not good at division, just multiply. 0, 8, 4, 6 times 8 is 48. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 4 is 28. Does that fit perfectly? Yes, it does. So we are left with our answer, 18. So H equals 18, don't forget the label, inches. And again, it's just maybe because I work fast with numbers, I'm just wondering if the questions were too hard, or maybe they just weren't looking at their notes. Because number 12, I completely thought that they would get it wrong, but I thought it would be nice for them to try it, because again, I allow test corrections every test. But something like this, where it's just, well, you find 1, and then missing dimensions, again, 9.1, it's just with a different label. Instead of finding area, you're trying to find volume. Same concept of trying to find it. So that's what it's all about. Let me know. I'm gonna post this video. It's definitely gonna be a little bit scuffed with all the radio talking and the phone talking, but it's just makes it so you guys understand what I am trying to teach them. I'm trying to teach them how to use their notes, how to use notes, and how to take notes. Because again, they need this skill, especially for high school.